Pico Truncado is the kind of place that makes you lower your shoulders without realizing it. A small town in northern Santa Cruz, province Argentina, old wells in the distance, quiet streets, familiar faces. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone. Which sounds comforting until you realize it also means everyone knows your business, your relationships, your fights, and your rumors. Because in the early morning hours of July 16, 2010, that town woke up to something that didn't fit the script. A local resident was out walking his dog near an isolated area, an open field roughly 3 miles from the town, when he found the body of Johanna Casus. She was only 20 years old, a model, a former local beauty queen, and she'd been shot twice at close range. One bullet striking her heart and passing between her second and third ribs. And right away, the town's small and peaceful vibe evaporated. Because when a young woman is murdered in a place like this, the suspect list is never long. Not because the police are lazy, but because the truth is usually right there in her orbit. Ex-boyfriends, current boyfriends, men with bruised egos and loud mouths. The people who know her routines and know exactly how to get close. In Johanna's case, 2 names hit the top of the list immediately. Marcos Díaz, her partner up to the day she died, and Víctor Singolani, her former boyfriend. And what makes this story so unsettling isn't just the murder. It's the bizarre chain reaction that follows. The kind that makes people argue for years over what really happened, who really did it, and how justice can somehow convict 2 different men for the same crime. Now, before we get into it, if you're into true crime stories that unfold like a slow, tightening knot, the kind that makes you pause the video and go, wait, what? Then you're in the right place. So, if that's your thing, please gently tap the like button like you're trying not to wake someone up, and then immediately slam the door and act confused when it panics. Also, subscribe and turn on notifications because we drop story-style cases that'll have you double-checking your locks. Alright, let's get into it. Johanna didn't grow up as an ordinary child. She was a twin, and not just, oh wow, they look alike. Twins, I'm talking full mirror twins, identical. Her sister's name was Edith, born just 15 minutes after Johanna. Their parents were Marcelina and Valentin Casus, a police officer who eventually separated from Marcelina, but stayed active in his daughter's lives. The twins were so similar, their own mother would occasionally confuse them, sometimes even changing the same baby's diaper twice. And they weren't just physically alike, there was that eerie twin connection people talk about. Like it's a myth until you see it up close. Edith once described how they could sense when something was happening to the other, and there's one moment that still sticks out. When Edith was 11, she got into an accident in a nearby city while she was with their mother, ended up in a coma for several days. And when she finally woke up, she kept asking for Johanna. Their father later told her that Johanna, back home with him, felt like Edith was calling out to her. As they grew, the twins diverged in personality. Edith was quieter and more reserved, while Johanna was the outgoing one, fashion, makeup, modeling, the whole vibe. She did fashion shows, traveled to bigger cities like Bahia Blanca, and at one point she was crowned the beauty queen of Pico Truncado. And then, when Johanna was just 15 years old, she met a local young man named Victor. He was 21 at the time. They met at the town's bingo hall. Johanna was there with her father and brother. Victor was at another table with his mother and a friend, and later Victor would claim he noticed Johanna glancing his way. He was known for being charming, something of a ladies' man, working long hours at the oil company, and spending his spare time out with friends, often preferring a local brothel instead of bars. And he even claimed he'd been with more than 40 women like it was a flex, not a red flag. According to Victor, Johanna made the first move. She approached him and handed him a note with her name and number. He texted her right away. They started talking, then hanging out, and soon they were officially a couple. Her mother, Marcelina, accepted it despite the age gap. She preferred that over her daughter running around unpredictably with other people. But over time, Johanna's parents began noticing something darker in Victor: aggression, jealousy, the kind of behavior that doesn't show up as one big moment, but as a pattern that slowly makes everyone around you tense. There was even an episode where Victor, while trying to strike Johanna, shattered a window and injured his hand instead. And then things got even messier, because when Johanna and Victor ended their relationship, Victor started dating Edith. Let that sink in. The guy who dated for a year and a half ends up with your twin sister in the same small town where everybody knows everybody, and judgment travels faster than the internet. Victor later claimed he was never romantically involved with both sisters at the same time. He said Edith had been dating someone else while he was with Johanna, and sometimes the four of them even went out together. There were also times Victor invited Johanna to hang out and Edith tagged along because she was alone at home. Eventually, Victor said he was drawn to Edith because she was quieter, more simple. In his words, Edith and Victor confessed feelings, but Edith wanted to talk to Johanna first. Johanna told her they were adults and understood what they were doing, so she didn't object. But even if Johanna gave permission, the dynamic shifted. The twins' close bond changed. Friends drifted. Each sister developed her own circle. Victor and Edith eventually broke up. Victor dated another local woman, and the sisters moved into complicated relationships of their own. But 2 years later, after Victor ended yet another relationship, he reached out to Johanna again. At the time, Johanna was with someone else, but she ended that relationship to reunite with Victor. That reconciliation lasted only 2 months because Johanna wanted children and Victor didn't. After that, Johanna began dating Marcos Díaz. And this is where the tone shifted, because her parents didn't like Marcos, and it wasn't just parent intuition. The Díaz family carried rumors, including a grave accusation that one of the Marcos brothers had killed his own child. Marcos had a reputation: violent, possessive, controlling, extremely jealous, constantly messaging Johanna, not letting her go out alone, and in spite of all those warning signs, Johanna moved in with Marcos after only 6 months of dating. Meanwhile, Victor was back in Edith's orbit again, confessing he had never really moved on from their breakup. And at this point, you've got a triangle, except it's not a triangle, it's a knot. 2 sisters, 2 men, past and present. Relationships tangled so tightly that if one person pulls, everybody feels it. Then comes the night of July 15th, 2010. Days before the twins' birthday, Johanna went out to a party with Marcos until around 3 in the morning. She was the last seen alive as she and Marcos left the venue together. And notice how normal that sounds. This isn't she went into a sketchy alley, it's just a night out, the kind thousands of people have without incident. But early the next morning, July 16th, a local resident walking his dog found Johanna's lifeless body in that open field, the forest belt of Pico Truncado. And suddenly the town is a crime scene, police activity everywhere. Word spreading faster than sirens, people whispering in doorways, parents calling their kids home like it's midnight. Even though it's morning, the autopsy confirmed Johanna had been shot at close range, 2 shots fatal within hours. Police detained both Marcos and Victor as primary suspects because in a case like this, the first question is always who had the strongest emotional reason to do something unforgivable. Investigators theorized the killing had been planned and possibly carried out by both men, believing Johanna wanted to end her relationship with Marcos, and the men decided if she wouldn't be with them, she wouldn't be with anyone. But theories feel convincing right up until evidence laps in your face. Marcos, despite being the last person seen with Johanna, was freed a week later for insufficient evidence. And then he fled, which is never a good look. Most innocent people don't hear murder investigation and go, cool, I'm gonna vanish for 6 months. Meanwhile, authorities found DNA on items linked to the scene, on a cigarette butt and a music CD near Johanna's body, which would later link to Marcos, but by the time that discovery happened, Marcos was already gone, and it would take more than 6 months for him to be captured and placed into pretrial detention. During all of this, Victor remained in custody, charged with the murder of his former girlfriend. Victor insisted he was innocent. He claimed that on the morning of July 16th, he had been at the casino and then at a friend's house until 6 a.m., but he couldn't confirm his whereabouts and his alibi didn't hold. 2 years later, in mid-2012, Victor stood trial for Johanna's murder, and the prosecution's case was built on 3 major pieces of evidence. A paraffin test on Victor's hands done right after his arrest that detected gunpowder, tracking dogs that allegedly placed him at the crime scene, and his alibi collapsed. Witnesses painted Victor as abusive and controlling. Johanna's father accused Victor of past violent behavior and threats, describing an overheard speakerphone call where Victor threatened Johanna. A witness near the crime scene mentioned delayed police response. The person who found Johanna said he saw no blood at the scene. Another witness talked about Victor's complicated relationship with the twins, suggesting he saw Edith as a substitute for Johanna. Edith herself took the stand, wearing a shirt demanding justice for her sister, and testified that Victor had been physically abusive toward both her and Johanna, claimed he had coerced them into intimate relationships, and said she believed he had played a part in Johanna's death, calling him a psychopath. But Victor's lawyer pushed back hard, arguing serious investigative errors. The paraffin test, supposedly scientific, became a point of controversy because of the procedure was described as sloppy. Conducted without expert witness present, the officer didn't wear gloves, potentially contaminating the evidence, and even used his teeth to cut adhesive tape, meant to collect residue. Despite those lapses, results showed Victor had a high concentration of gunpowder on his right hand. Victor offered an explanation. He said he'd recently been inside his brother-in-law's truck, often used for hunting, where bullets and gunpowder traces could have been left on seats and transferred to him without handling a firearm. The defense also challenged the tracking dog evidence, noting that out of the 3 dogs, 2 were negative, while only 1 gave a positive identification. And they argued that human scent can't linger up to a month, meaning a dog alert doesn't prove that he was there that night. Still, on June 27, 2012, Victor was convicted and sentenced to 13 years in prison for simple homicide. You'd think that ends the relationship chaos. It doesn't, because after the conviction, Edith shocked everyone by announcing she had resumed a relationship with Victor, and later she became convinced of his innocence and believed the true perpetrator was Marcos, who was in the pretrial detention. When questions about her earlier sworn testimony, Edith claimed she had been pressured by her parents. While Victor was in prison, he took up carpentry. Together they sold items Victor made: chairs, stools, tables, magazine racks, portraits, paintings, and with the money, Victor bought a ring. During the prison visit, he proposed. Edith accepted. For the twins' parents, that news was devastating. Marcelina, the mother, made a chilling declaration. Like Edith had also died. The physical woman remained, but the daughter she once knew had vanished behind the walls of her sister-in-law's home. The family filed a legal injunction to prevent the marriage, claiming the 23-year-old was mentally unstable and they feared for her safety. But Edith showed no signs of dysfunction that would prevent marriage. So, on February 14, 2013, Edith and Victor tied the knot amid widespread disapproval. Journalists flocked from around the world. Mayor outlets covered it. The civil registry office was heavily guarded. Chaos broke out when Victor arrived in a prison transport, People threw punches, stones, eggs, tomatoes. Despite it all, Edith and Victor declared their love and talked about starting a family. Then in June 2013, Marcos Diaz finally went to trial. He was described as violent, controlling, known for harassing girlfriends, and often being involved in armed fights. His unexplained trip the day after Johanna's murder was viewed as an attempt to escape. He stopped texting Johanna right after her supposed time of death, suggesting he knew she was gone, which contrasted with his frequent texts the day before. And the DNA from the cigarette butt and the music CD found near Johanna's body linked Marcos to the scene and became very key evidence. In court, Edith, supporting Victor, tearfully accused Marcos of killing her sister. Johanna's father, Valentin, also testified, describing Marcos as dangerous and involved in cult-like activities, often seen causing trouble at the cemetery. Marcelina, the mother, described Marcos as abusive and controlling, saying he never allowed Johanna to be alone, not even at family parties. The prosecutor explained the accusations, arguing Marcos was the actual perpetrator and the only one present when Johanna was killed. On July 2, 2013, Marcos Diaz was sentenced to 12 years in prison for the homicide of Johanna. Two different courts had now convicted two different men for the same crime. Marcos expressed dissatisfaction with the sentence, reaffirmed his innocence, claiming he was convicted because there was no one else to investigate. Edith expressed relief that justice had finally been served. Victor's lawyer announced plans to seek his immediate release, arguing there was never conclusive evidence placing Victor at the crime scene and that the new conviction supported what they had said all along. Ultimately, on December 5, 2013, the Higher Court of Justice announced Victor's release due to insufficient evidence to convict him. After the release, Victor sought compensation from the state, requesting $75,000 for wrongful imprisonment, but he received no payment. Over time, Marcelina began to reconsider her view and eventually accepted that Victor had not been involved in Johanna's murder. Edith and Victor's marriage lasted years, but by 2021, it was known they had separated. She was living with a new partner and expecting her first child, while he had rebuilt his life with another woman. And after decades of tangled romance, a brutal murder, and two equally controversial trials, the case of Johanna seemed like it finally had an ending. Until you realize it doesn't. Because to this day, there are still people who debate the facts and question whether Victor was truly innocent of what happened on July 16, 2010, or whether he managed to slip through another crack in one of Argentina's most sensational crimes. And if you've made it this far, I want your honest take in the comments. Do you think Victor was a scapegoat? Do you think Marcos acted alone? Or do you think the story has a missing piece nobody ever found? And if you want another video that'll make you look at small town peace a little differently, then click the next video on the screen here. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't a stranger. It's the person who already knows exactly how close they can get. Trust me, you won't forget this one.